Okay. Wait 1 second for. Okay. I am back. Better than ever. Anyway. We're gonna be reacting to the video again. Let's go. God fucking damn it. The gloves. I want to look nice in every stream. I don't need the gloves. Fuck it. Okay.
Confused and not able to understand.
Tomorrow I'm gonna be streaming somewhere else. With someone you haven't seen on the channel for a little bit, you know? And then hopefully I can stream with Bimbo again. 2 people you haven't seen for a little while, so let's make it happen, Gavin. Let's do this.
Somehow, people didn't walk away from those reviews being confused and not able to understand what I was saying about the game.
A good way to do it is, what would you say someone came up to you on the street? So a 7 is, it's good.
Why appeal to a scale at all? Why not just say it's good or decent or excellent or whatever adjective you want to use? Why apply a number?
I would say why not? I would say why not do both? Why not appeal to a scale and say you're if it's good or bad or decent. I think using both is better than one. And that's even better.
Number out of 10 to it at all in the first place.
It's not great. It's good. And firstly, that does encompass a lot of video games, especially when you're a reviewer.
The objective quality of a video game doesn't change because they're a reviewer or not.
People who review games or play games professionally are, by virtue of the thing that is their job, playing a lot more video games than most people.
Than most people? Yeah, that's probably true. Than most gamers?
Most people, yeah. Most gamers. I'm not entirely sure. I would say most gamers play game to completion so that they have. I think gamers have a better understanding of games. Yeah, I think reviewers, I think, play more games. Gamers have better understanding of games. I think that's how it works.
Maybe true. Than most video game enthusiasts, though? I don't know. That feels like a stretch.
Is there a difference between gamers and gamers enthusiasts? Wouldn't a gamer be a gamer enthusiast? I think they're kind of the same thing. What are semantics?
Now that I think about it, it actually kind of hurts your argument here the more they play games, because you would expect that they would have more expertise, more knowledge.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That's so true. I mean, they're just maining the story, right? They're just maining the story. A lot of times. I mean, you have people, I don't like talking about him because what happened with him. We have the completionists who are 100% games, but people who work at IGN, big publications like that, I don't think do every little thing all the time, and I think they should. It takes longer, but I think they should.
Qualified, but I guess that's not a thing to you. So why don't they? Why doesn't a person who plays a lot of games have those things?
Now, before you get mad at me for that, it's just that they're allowed to do it during work hours. So they're playing more video games than every other human who has a job that is not in the games industry because they're allowed to play games at work. So, like, by default, they have more hours on any given day in which they can/are playing video.
I don't think you can make that statement. I think they're For anyone on the planet, I don't think that's true.
games.
Maybe, potentially, perhaps.
But because the average games journalist is able to play more video games than the average reader, it's kind of another reason that a review is just some fucking guy's opinion.
Well, you haven't given a first reason.
No, that should mean the exact opposite. They're playing so many games, they should understand gameplay, story, graphics, all that stuff even better. If they're seeing it every day, they can make comparisons between games in its own genre, different genres, art styles, all that shit. You know? They should be a better expert on what's good or not because they've seen more.
But like, surely that would be the opposite of the case, right? Surely the more games you play, the more informed you should be on video games and your familiarity with their mechanics, controls, etc., right?
What somebody who has played 1,000 games thinks of a game is inherently going to be different to what somebody who's only played 100 games thinks of a game.
Inherently?
Inherently. I think they'd be definitely different. I think the person who plays 1,000 games will have more interest, will have more, potentially more insight, but I don't know inherently. It depends how well they focus on the game, what kind of games they're playing. It all depends, I think.
Apparently, I don't know about that. Can those two people not arrive at the exact same conclusion
That's
about
true.
the same video game, like a Tetris or Pac-Man or Pong? What if the person who played 1,000 games has a really bad memory or just hasn't absorbed those experiences well? And inversely, what if the person with 100 games under their belt was much more engaged and analytical with those games? If the difference in games played is inherent, then wouldn't two gamers with 1,999 games played have different views on games? And wouldn't any two gamers, regardless of games played, be inherently different? I think the people who use inherently don't often understand the weight that it carries when they sling it around in sentences.
Because you are coming into that with that wealth of knowledge, experience, and those set your expectations.
Well, then it's definitely not inherent then. Two different gamers can have completely different sets of expectations
Exactly.
based off the kind of games they've played and how many and what they find to be satisfactory experiences.
You might find something bland or generic because you played 10 other games like it. If someone has played less games than you, they may not feel that way. Imagine somebody playing.
And I mean, a person, she said may, so it's fine.
Star Wars Outlaws as their very first Ubisoft game.
I'm not certain why you felt the need to specify the first Ubisoft game that they played, but I would imagine that they would be dissatisfied with the bugs and the glitches and the terrible story and the awful writing and the inconsistent mechanics. Satisfied with the bugs and the...
Yeah, just because you haven't played games before doesn't mean you understand. Doesn't mean you don't see the problem with the game. You don't go, oh, it's a game. I've never played one before. It's great. You can still see problems with the story even if you've never consumed that type of media before. Is she trying to say that?
And the glitches and the terrible story and the awful writing and the inconsistent mechanics that constantly break. The lacking rewards for exploration and the empty places to explore. The repetitive, dull, tedious combat. Maybe if they had really low standards and if they were stupid, they would think it's really good, but I don't know. I guess it's possible.
I myself was like, I'm kind of burnt out of Star Wars. I'm kind of burnt out with the Ubisoft formula right now. This feels very samey. It's not grabbing me. So I tried and I decided that I wasn't going to play any more of it. But someone who's never played a Ubisoft game before might be like, holy shit, this is crazy. What is
Why specifically a Ubisoft game? Why not a game in general? But why specifically a person that never played a game before? I think she is trying to say someone that hasn't played a game before would find it amazing. And perhaps they would. But not because the story is good. Perhaps because they've never controlled something like that. But it wouldn't be potentially because of the story.
what is this?
You mean in a good way or in a bad way?
We're all just a bunch of guys who have this.
Look, she doesn't look very confident about what she's saying either. I think she's making this all up on the spot.
You mean in a good way or in a bad way?
We're all just
How is my lighting? My lighting good as always. What do you think about my lighting, everyone? I try and make it right.
a bunch of guys who have just fucking opinions.
No,
My
why-
opinions are way.
You think this is such a great point? Why? It's a funny screenshot right there. But why does she keep making this point? It's you denigrate yourself and everyone around you. It's awful.
Better than yours. And I'd hazard a guess that pretty much everybody watching this video has better opinions than you two. I already feel quite confident that you are extremely unqualified to speak on the topic of video games.
It's all so subjective, and it's impossible not to be subjective. You're inherently bringing all of the experiences that you have had.
No, you can totally be objective when talking about things. You know, you have a standard. You know, you have a standard, and you create a standard, and you stick to that standard. Oh, you know, and then things that just don't make sense. If let's say a Dinglebop, you have a Dinglebop, you know, in a story that's been running for a while, and you know it's just been sitting there. You know, the Dinglebop can erase planets, right? Just shoot it and erase planets, right? Now, let's say they're fighting against enemies that have entire planets, you know. That would have been really useful, you know. That would be a fuck up if they just introduced that there. Because it would be, why didn't they use it before? It would not make sense. But and that's not good. And we should be good, not bad. Sorry, Simon. I'm Simon from World Culture. No. But if it just, you know, if it did something that made sense with everything that came before, there wouldn't be a problem.
To every opinion that you form on pretty much everything.
Yeah, sure, it's impossible to be completely subjectiveless. However, because we have these things called brains, we are able to recognize that our experiences are subjective. We recognize that we have biases. We can strive to be objective in how we look at things. I absolutely despise this attitude because I've seen it before. Oh, people are subjective, so you can't be objective. So fuck it. It's all subjective, all the way down. No.
Fuck it. Let media go into the dirt. You know, let nothing's ever bad. Everything is good in your opinion, right? Or bad in your opinion. Then how did your job make any sense for the last 3 years? Did you fall into a different universe or something? Or what happened? Tell me about your job, what you did there, because it doesn't make sense with what you're saying.
To hell with that shit. I recognize my experiences are subjective. However, I can strive.
Again, I would like to know what's going on in Lana Puce's head when I would hope she didn't script that. I don't think she did, but I would hope she didn't, because then she would have to write it down and think about what she's writing and look at it and see the contradictions. At least if it would come in off the top of her head, she doesn't necessarily have to remember what she's saying, although you probably should. You definitely should.
And yearn to be objective, especially with things like reporting information to other people to influence their buying decisions.
Yeah.
It's such a cowardly, lazy cop-out. Oh, we're subjective, so video game reviews are purely subjective when we can't. No, fuck that shit. accurately report the facts and the mechanics of the video game to your audience. If you can't do that, don't review video games.
And that's why reviews are what they are. They're just an opinion.
My reviews were not just my opinion. My reviews were backed up by the facts of what that game were, its mechanics, its story, its writing. Feel free to denigrate your opinions by calling them just your opinions.
And denigrate everyone. And she tried to throw everyone under this giant cosmic bus. It's amazing.
Will do no such thing. Clearly, I hold myself to a far higher standard than you do.
Secondly, I think there's a misconception that 5 is supposed to mean average on the scales, where it doesn't, at least not on any that I've ever seen. A 5 for IGN means mediocre.
Well, if you can believe it, and you should, because
Isn't that medium?
worked there for years, IGN doesn't have an average number. There's no position for an average game on their chart. It's actually mildly insidious. Yes, 5 is called mediocre, but etymology aside, let's actually read what the description of a mediocre game is. 5.
5. Mediocre. This is the kind of bland, unremarkable game we've mostly forgotten about a day after we finish playing. A mediocre game isn't something you should spend your time or money on if you consider either to be precious, but they're past the time if you have nothing better to do. I can agree with that. Fallout 6 definitely 76 wasn't mediocre. Yeah, I agree with that.
Mediocre. This is the kind of bland, unremarkable game we've mostly forgotten about a day after we finish playing. A mediocre game isn't something you should spend your time or money on if you consider either to be precious, but they'll pass the time if you have nothing better to do. Let's compare that to 6.
Okay, these recommendations come from boatloads of ifs. There's a good game in here somewhere, but in order to find, you'll have to know where to look, and perhaps turn a blind eye to some significant drawbacks. This seems a lot of copy, and it seems very copium. A lot of, well, if you do this or that, it seems not committal on saying it's okay. I mean, it seemed very...
Okay. These recommendations come with a boatload of ifs. There's a good game in here somewhere, but in order to find it, you'll have to know where to look. And perhaps
there's a good game in here somewhere, but I mean, if you have to turn a blind eye to things, it doesn't make it good. And if it had significant drawbacks, it doesn't make it good. So there's not a good game near somewhere. I mean, a game is the whole game. A game is not. You can't just say, "Oh, it's a good game," and forget about these other things.
Blind eye to some significant drawbacks. I think that 5 for mediocre is definitely more negatively worded than a 6, which you'd think, yeah, of course. I mean, 5 versus 6, right? But there's no average spot or really average description on the scale here. If you are an IGN reviewer and you play a game and you come away from that game thinking, oh, okay, it's an average game. It is an average game. And then you look at the scale, the 1 to 10 scale for IGN, hopefully that's what you're doing, and you're looking for a place to put it numerically.
Can we read that? I would like to read that too.
what do you do? Well,
Okay, for one reason, number 4, bad. For one reason or another, these games made us wish we'd never played them. Okay, that seems pretty bad. Even if there's a good idea or two in there somewhere, they're buried under so many bad ones and poor execution. We simply can't recommend you waste your time. I think that's good. Yeah, I would like to see 3, but I think it looks good to me. 6 is a very, very 5 and 6. I think they should be switched. Although I would change 6.
The mediocre is written kind of negatively, like it's more bad than good, and the game's average. So you're kind of encouraged to give it that 6 slot. And there's an average game. I think that the scale is sort of designed and written.
And 6 is definitely more well, if you ignore this and that, well, I shouldn't ignore this or that, you know? I don't want to have to ignore things, you know? I want things to be good.
Such that an IGN reviewer is more encouraged to put it on the 6 instead of the 5. It is a soft encouragement, sure, but I think it does exist. So, yes, Alana, 5 is not average on the scale. There is no average on the scale.
I disagree with that. 5 on the scale seemed pretty average. It's just that 6 seemed to be weirdly what's the word? Weirdly apologetic about itself. About no, please just forget this stuff. Please, it's okay.
And I don't think that's an accident.
They describe it as something that is bland and unremarkable. And
3.
I guess with that definition, I would
3. I'd rather read 3. 3. You're welcome. We saved you from making a terrible mistake. Okay, I like that. By buying the collection of poorly executed, badly or unoriginal ideas, or even playing it for free. I mean, I'd play any game for free. Well, even a bad game generally had some bright spots. That's not what you said in number 4. Awful one. An awful one. It's consistently unenjoyable. I'll play a bad game for free, but that's not what you said about number 4.
I wouldn't be like super uncomfortable personally categorizing Star Wars Outlaws that way. Maybe I haven't played enough that I feel super uncomfortable personally categorizing Star Wars Outlaws that way. Maybe I haven't played.
Let's face it, anything worse than bad, it's a train wreck. Worse than awful, that's kind of impressive. Not only are these games not fun, but they're outright infuriating and insulting.
Played enough that I feel confident saying that.
Well, as someone who spent about 35 hours in...
I haven't played enough that I feel confident saying that.
Why even talk about it? Why are you trying to defend it then?
Well, as someone...
If you're not comfortable talking about it, you seem very defensive of it.
Who spent about 35 hours in Star Wars Outlaws and has completed the game, I can very safely say that giving it a 5 is being way too generous.
But that becomes complicated when you realize how many...
Generous.
But that becomes complicated when you realize how many games do fit below the 5 category, and that's kind of the point of this video.
Well, what do you mean? That shouldn't matter at all. Who cares how many 2s and 3s there are? That doesn't impact the kind of game that a 5 is, or the quality of a 6 or a 7. Those things are completely independent of one another. And if the scale is really bottom heavy with terrible games, well, that's fine. Make better. Or the quality of a 6 or a 7. Those things are completely independent of one another.
Your job is to at least the last piece was her job, what to talk about the game and give a score. Your job is not to care how any of these people feel about what you're saying. You're just giving the facts. Although I think there's a lot of you scratch my back, I scratch yours type of thing. You get at a lot of these websites, privileges, going to events, all that stuff. Angry Joe, talked about this in a video a long time ago about he used to get all these behind the scenes shit, but he doesn't anymore when he reviews games badly because that's not what game industry want to hear. But he does review games badly because he's consistent, unlike you, Pierce.
Another, and if the scale is really
But
bottom
at
heavy
least
with
in video game reviews, movie reviews aren't always hit or miss.
terrible games, well, that's fine. Make better games, and the scale wouldn't be bottom heavy. It's not the fault of a scale that there's a lot of bad games.
5 is not actually baseline average, and it makes sense that most scores that these outlets give are
I mean, that's what the thing says. It's mediocre. It's
going to be above a 5 because in comparison to the amount of video games that come out, the AAA games that people are playing, the games that are popular enough for people to even be talking about them, for somebody to need to write a review about them, are going to be in that upper category.
Wait, what do you mean they're going to be? Like it's preordained?
yeah.
You should
That was a weird sentence. Right?
call them as you see them. You shouldn't say, "Oh, they're AAA games. They're going to be better." Well, you don't know that, not until you review them. That's the whole point. If you go into the scale or go into the review thinking, "Oh, it's a big AAA game," of course it's going to be a 6 or up.
Although, to be fair, she might have met once a lot of the game previously. I don't know if I agree with this, but a lot she may mean. No, I don't agree with this, but especially from Ubisoft and but she may mean that a lot of the game currently that came out that she already knows about are going in that higher category. She may mean that if I'm steel manning her.
Well, then you've already tarnished the system. You're bringing in that bias. And the whole point is to be objective and to recognize that bias and not let it cloud your judgment.
Like, there are so many video games that come out. And the truth is, most games that release are very, very,
Also,
very...
she makes a lot. She makes it point a lot. There's a lot of games that come out. It's... Oh, why is she making that point a lot? Is she trying to say that... I don't know why she's making that point. Maybe I'll find out.
So many video games that come out. And the truth is, most games that release are very, 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 very flawed.
Okay, then if you review
Okay, then how can you say that? I thought they were subjective.
them, you can just put them on the 1 to 3
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
part of the scale if you need to, right? That's why the scale has low numbers for those bad games, right?
Most games that come out don't even have an inch of the complexity that you see in something like Star Wars Outlaws.
Oh,
Well, what does complexity have to do with
That you see in something like Star Wars Outlaws.
well,
yeah, I'm again. She's defending it, but what I assume when she means complexity, she means the how many, it's 3D, all that stuff. But that's my best guess. But it doesn't even matter about the complexity. It matters about how good it is. Even simple games can be good.
what does complexity have to do with it? Tetris and chess and checkers and Pong and Pac-Man, all of these games are better than Star Wars Outlaws, but they're way simpler. Would you say that Peggle is worse than Star Wars Outlaws because it isn't as complex? Peggle is worse than Star Wars, way simpler. Would you say that Peggle is...
What's Peggle? Never heard that game before. I'm gonna look it up. No, that's Jessica Peggle. Right. American tennis player. Peggle. No, that's... No! Damn it! Peggle. Okay. Oh, it's a puzzle game. Peggle is a casual puzzle video game developed by PopCap Games, initially released for Microsoft. And okay, it's a puzzle game. I didn't know that.
Is worse than Star Wars Outlaws because it isn't as complex? It should be about how well the mechanics are executed and synergize with one another. It shouldn't be about just sheer complexity.
And you may take that with some kind of like offense, as though you think that Star Wars Outlaws is not complex, and that would be totally fair.
I mean, Star Wars Outlaws is complex compared to certain games, other games, but I still don't know what complexity.
If you compare it to everything else that you've played, but if you,
I don't. Why don't you say it? Why not talk about the quality, not the complexity?
Compare it to the games that come out, it has incredibly complex systems.
No, not really.
Complex system. I think she's trying to avoid that word good or bad, so she's saying complex. I think that's the drive. And yes, I don't think like God of War is a lot more complex than Star Wars Outlaws. I mean, I've only seen the gameplay, but to me, I'm only seeing the gameplay, never played it, I've seen the story. But it seems a lot more complex, and it's God of War Ragnarok seems, and it's a lot more complex in comparison to it in its story and its gameplay. Definitely more than even Star Wars Fallen Order is more complex.
Really, it's actually not that complex, and what it has isn't really mechanically sound. It constantly breaks and can't handle itself. Even if you compare Star Wars Outlaws to older Ubisoft games, there's no comparison. Far Cry New Dawn is more complex and sound than Outlaws is. Assassin's Creed Origins, Assassin's Creed Unity, and hell, The Division 2. These are games that are more complex and they're more mechanically sound.
Most games aren't even close to that level of complexity.
I totally disagree with that, but I don't know if that matters. We're talking about the quality here, not the complexity, but she's trying to change the conversation, I think.
Most games that release have one song, they have maybe two inputs, they have very few mechanics. That
I don't agree with that.
Just
wait, the amount of songs in the soundtrack is a determinant on how complex a game is? I mean, I suppose that's technically...
I mean, yes, it's true, but we're talking about quality here.
Technically true. What's the point of Star Wars Outlaws having more songs and more mechanics than, let's say, the average random game if those mechanics are broken and don't work and are constantly busted? I just don't understand why we've just arbitrarily chosen complexity to be the thing that determines the quality of a video game and not its execution and its construction.
You kind of press the same button over and over and over again. A lot of them crash all the time. They're very buggy.
Oh, it's about game crashing, huh? Well, during
Just like Star Wars Outlaws.
my playthrough of Star Wars Outlaws, the game crashed twice, which I hear is lucky that it crashed that few times.
Okay.
And then it also blue screened my PC in the middle of one of my streams. And trust me, sister, we don't want to get into a discussion on how buggy Star Wars Outlaws is.
Sometimes they don't even have music. Most games that come out do not have.
I mean,
even-
I mean, she's saying that like it's a criticism, but if a game,
Outlaws is.
Sometimes they don't even have music.
I mean, would that be a bad thing? It depends on what the game is. Why is that a bad thing? I would like you to develop that.
Most games that come out do not have even like an inch of the complexity or nuance that you are used to.
What? I disagree. What do you mean you are used to? I think most people play modern and older games. I mean, more complex games and less complex games. Is she trying to say that is she trying to say that since Star Wars Outlaws is more complex, you don't understand it? Therefore, you can't define its quality? Is she trying to say that?
Used to in AAA video games.
Better to be simpler and high quality than complex and low quality.
Bad UI, unintuitive controls.
Oh, bad UI and terrible controls, huh? Let's go ahead and we'll use an example from my stream of Outlaws. This is a screenshot from my second stream near the end. While the UI is customizable in certain ways, it really fails to do what a UI should do, which is convey important information to the player. G are your Bacta vials. These are your health potions, essentially. You press G and you heal yourself with one of these. It does not tell you the maximum amount of vials you can carry, which is something that you can upgrade with kits and abilities. So I could have 4 vials out of what? Out of 4? Out of 5? Out of 6? I don't know. These white bars.
It doesn't even tell you how many you currently. I mean, how many? Yeah, exactly. That's fine.
Bars here are your health, and getting extra bars for your health is also a very useful upgrade to get in the game. These bars don't have a numeric value that is shown to the player. You have no idea how much actual hit points you have, just that you have this many, and the more is better. Do I start with 10 and then 20 and 30, or is each one of these 25 hit points or 50 hit points?
I mean, in God of War Ragnarok, you just have a line that each enemy does a certain amount of damage. It doesn't exactly tell you how much damage they're doing. I don't know what's wrong with that. That seems fine to me.
I don't know. We've got no clue. Now, I am playing on PC, and if you press U, yes, U, then it will bring up another menu that tells you that 5 will bring up your electro binoculars and 4 will bring out your grenades. In this screenshot, I have 3 grenades out of a maximum of, I don't know. It doesn't tell you. I could be 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5. Your grenade capacity is something you could.
Yeah, I was about to say, does it really matter to see your capacity, how many you can have? Because, well, I have grenades, so that's the important part. But I would like to know how many grenades I have out of how many you
can upgrade with your talents and with your gear, but it doesn't tell you what your maximum grenade count is.
Yeah, I would
check
like
it,
to know my maximum.
You have to press U. Yes, you have to press U in order to find that out. Even equipping grenades with 4 will not tell you how many grenades you have.
Okay, that sucks.
But I guess I shouldn't expect a game that cost $200, $300 million in 4 years of development time from a massive video game corporation. I guess I shouldn't have had such high expectations for them to be able to get down the basics that video games figured out decades ago. But hey, Alana, at least it's complex, right?
Just all of the things that net them somewhere between 1 to 5 on a game review scale. That means that they kind of need the space for the 5 to 10 for the other games.
Well, you just described all scales. The lower numbers are for the bad games, and the higher numbers are for the good games. That's
doesn't seem. It definitely haven't scripted.
what the numbers are for.
But basically, at a point where hundreds, if not thousands, of games are released every single day, usually from one-person teams who do not do it full time, you don't even hear. If not thousands of games are released every single day, usually from one-person teams who do not do it full time.
That doesn't matter, because the quality at the quality, and if it's a bad game, it's a bad game. It's a good game, it's a good game.
You don't even hear about these games, but
Well, wait, what do you mean? If they're not being talked about, if nobody knows about them, and if they're not on the scale, then how come you're allowing them to have such a huge influence on the scale? No games or amount of games should impact the scale.
Yeah, it's about the specific game you're talking about. Games should not impact the scale because it's more on one side than the other. That's retarded.
Doesn't matter what the games are. The scale should be independent. Games should conform to the scale, not the other way around.
I'm going to do an experiment for you all right now. I'm going to boot up the 3 most recent releases on Steam and play them for you right now. I don't know what they are. This is not rehearsed.
Oh my god, Alana, you know you can't show porn on YouTube, right?
It's not going to be the games on the bestsellers list, just the most recent releases, new releases on Steam, and I will show you exactly what I'm talking about, of like what majority of video games that release actually.
I don't. That doesn't really matter. I don't see how this would matter.
Look like. Okay, everybody, I've downloaded the 3 most recent releases on Steam. They are Doll Catching Simulator, Future Breach, Youngblood, which is free to play, so that's pretty cool, and Zool Dungeon. Let's start with Doll Catching Simulator.
We're not going to watch her play or attempt to play Doll Catching Simulator.
It functions, to be honest, very simple. The art is not great, but it works. 7 out of 10.
Okay, I don't know if that's a joke or not, but
Next, we have Zool Dungeon.
Zol Dungeon. It's like soul, but with a Z.
I have no idea what this is. Trap? Zool, not enough. Unlock trap first. Okay. Right click to spawn your monster. Click him. Spawn him.
You seem to not really know what you're doing. Seems kind of hard for you to figure out what to do.
Spawn it. What's the timer for? Why am I being timed? The surviving hunter destroy hunter camps. I'm earning money, I think, maybe? Oh, this text. Increase base HP PT on summon. Increase movement speed on... Oh, yeah, okay. I can wait. I can give him little buffs. That's cool. So now we got like a jacked up Hobu. Am I trying to kill these guys? Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, got it. I think this is... Maybe I just spawn these in to kill these dudes. Oh, did I lose? Oh. Well, that's Zool Dungeon. Compelling.
I let the entirety of her Zol Dungeon gameplay run.
Compelling. Well, that's Zool Dungeon. Lose? Well, that's Zool
She doesn't like it.
Dungeon.
If you can't tell.
Compelling.
I let the entirety of her Zol Dungeon gameplay run because of how disrespectful I found it. Her scheme for this video is to take newly released Steam games and show how terrible and stupid they are so that she could justify Star Wars Outlaws being a 7 out of 10, as if any other game's quality should impact its placement on a scale.
Exactly.
She played what seemed to be a single game of Zol Dungeon, which was probably at most 10 minutes, including...
Yeah, exactly. You should play more of the game, get to know it. But you just didn't know what you were doing. And
the fiddling she did beforehand, without trying to engage with the game in any good faith way. Reading every description and making every statement like it's a question is just a petty, childish tool to seem aloof and disingenuously curious. I decided to purchase Zol Dungeon for myself, and I played it for 3.2 hours. I left a review on Steam based on that experience, and you can read that review there if you wish. It's up, it's public. It was mostly a negative experience, and I do not recommend the game. However, I gave the game a fair chance. I gave it its time, and I didn't just disingenuously fiddle with it for a few minutes to try and force some point of mine as an attempt to uplift Star Wars Outlaws of all
And
things.
this is stupid too because I don't know how it would uplift anything.
I do not like this idea of shitting all over somebody's indie game they made as Alana Pierce does. It's elitist, the actual apex of game journalism snobbery. So it's a new saying, you can take the journo out of IGN, but you can't take the IGN out of the journo. And this attitude of elitism is all in the service of filleting IGN and their shitty,
You don't-
bizarrely over positive review
You don't even work there anymore. That's the insane part. You want to suck their dick when they're not paying you money to do it.
of Star Wars Outlaws. Oh, look at the little pixel game somebody made and threw on Steam. It's so shit, and I won't even try and figure it out or engage with it, because if it's good, then I might have to say Star Wars Outlaws isn't good either. It's disgusting behavior. It's unbecoming of a journalist.
You're sucking Ubisoft's dick, and you're sucking IGN's dick. And it's like, you don't even work for Ubisoft, so you never even worked for them. I don't know. Let's just say she didn't, for argument's sake. And you didn't, and you worked for IGN, but you don't work for them anymore. So you're getting spit roasted, right? But why? Why not? You're not even being paid for them. It's crazy.
Journalist, it's unbecoming of an adult. I don't like Zol Dungeon because I played the game for hours and tried to engage with its mechanics and didn't think that they meshed well. You didn't like Zol Dungeon because you're trying to suck off Star Wars Outlaws. We are not the same.
Last but not least is Future Youngblood, a game that is apparently made with Unity. Game? Hello, this is a preview build to show the initial gameplay. Later versions will... Oh, okay, hang on. I can't do this one. As it turns out, Future Breach Youngblood was just a demo, so I'm going to go back to the Steam library, or the Steam store, rather.
What? No, they're giving you a demo. Play the demo. Demos are good. We should encourage more.
Anyway, I have to go. 50. Okay, I have to go. Oh, like and subscribe to me and Rags. All that good stuff. Bye.